good, guys? Ahmed back with another video here to review the DOA tape Care Package by rising New York star Kay Flock. As you all can probably tell by the title, I wasn't the biggest fan of the album, but I want to be clear as a disclaimer. Number one, this is just my opinion, and I have no problems if you like the album. I have no problems with anybody who doesn't or does like the album. And also, regardless of whether or not I personally like somebody's music, I will always respect somebody putting on for their city and making money to support their friends and family and their loved ones. And so, regardless of what I have to say about, the specifics of your album, I still am always going to appreciate somebody moving forward with New York music and providing for their friends and family. With that being said, sort of the opposite of a disclaimer, a lot of times in YouTube culture, I think we get caught up in the idea of clickbait and like, oh, this is clickbait, oh, that's clickbait. And I do want to be clear that my title was not clickbait. I do genuinely feel the way I do about this album and about Kay Flock in general. So let's get into it. To start off, let's start with the writing. The writing was easily the weakest portion of the record. A lot of repeating lyrics, a lot of very boring, sort of repetitive, played out rhymes and things that were being said. And to be clear, this is not me coming from a place of like, oh, you need to be super lyrical to whatever. That I'm not one of those, old school hip hop, whatever. That's not me. I understand that there are plenty of different ways to have good drill songwriting, whether that be having witty punchlines, such as Fabio or Polo G, having, trauma sort of layered throughout your music through Chef G and Sleepy Hollow, or just in telling incredible stories about your time in the hood, such as Lil Durk and King Von. There's, of course, plenty of different ways to be a good songwriter as a drill artist. Kay Flock just didn't do any of these things. Like I said, a lot of repeating lyrics, don't run, don't trip, everything dead. And, you could argue that things like everything dead and whatever are character traits of his rap music, but because of how often it pops up, it feels more like a freestyle crutch than it does an actual portion of his actual character trait of his music. The other problem I had is the lack of depth and versatility. I felt like there was really only one thing that he was talking about throughout the entire album, and even the most like hardened drill street guys get into other topics, whether that be trauma or relations with girls or just their new lifestyle now that they are famous. And there was also a severe lack of lyrical depth in Kay Flock's music. So overall, yeah, the writing was just bad. Moving on to the flows, also bad. There were plenty of instances where he was just frankly rapping off beat. The flow was pretty rudimentary and simple throughout, and that made for a pretty boring listening. I know a lot of people are going to bring this up, and so I might as well say it now. I do consider flow and delivery when I talk about flow, and the shouting just never did that much for me. I don't hate it, and it definitely can do something for some artists or for some people. But for me, it just never really did much in terms of building an aggressive and intense world or experience when listening to a music. It almost kind of gets annoying at some point, and so like I said, I don't mind it in Kay Flock's music. I think it has its place, but it's not a positive or a negative for me. It's really just neutral, and I think that like when it comes to sounding threatening, personally I don't know Kay Flock, so I don't know if he's threatening or not. But when it comes to sounding threatening, somebody like a Pusha T, somebody like a 22G's is always going to sound far more menacing than a 6ix9ine or a Scar Lord, just because I really can believe what they're saying. And again, I don't know who K Flock is. I'm just going based off of how I feel about shouting versus how I feel about different kinds of deliveries. And I don't want to speak to anybody's experience, of course. So yeah, that was flows. A lot of examples, and I'll get into this in the feature section as well, where a lot of the features kind of outshined him flow wise. And I feel like for someone who's supposed to be more comfortable on drill, it was a bit confusing and disappointing to feel like these guys aren't even really. There are outsiders and people who are not even from New York who don't even do this style who are following the beat better than you. And so that was also a bit of a letdown. So yeah, flows overall bad. Next up, we're gonna get into production and creativity. I have this as a mid. So and it's across it cancels out. So from a production standpoint, it was actually a pretty good album. There were quite a few samples that I enjoyed, and while they were sort of very implemented very rudimentary, like they did make for an enjoyable record, an enjoyable experience, sonically. Songs like "Shake It" and "Make a Movie," in particular, and "Brotherly Love" Part Two had a lot of an enjoyable production because of their samples. And overall, drill production is just always gonna be fun for me, right? I'm always gonna enjoy be a solid, good drill beat, and that was definitely what I got through this album, and it was definitely aggressive and dark and scary, and that was that's what you're gonna get. That's what you asked for. That's what you're gonna get. So overall, the production was pretty good. I do wish he would have taken more creative liberties, but he's still a young artist, so I'm not really like gonna be like, oh my goodness. On the flip side, so that was the good, but the creativity for me was bad. I think the difficulty I am always having with K Flock is the why. Like, why do I need to listen to him above other artists? What makes him special in comparison to other artists? And a lot of times, a lot of the stuff to me that I hear that makes him good is stuff I've heard from other people, whether it be the sample flips that Sleepy Hollow initially implemented, or the aggressive tonality, which people like 22Gs have already done proficiently, or the screaming, which ironically was done by 6ix9ine. I just don't really get the sense that he's found his own original sound, really. And there's still so much that needs to there's a lot of artistic growth that I feel has the potential to happen, but I feel hasn't happened yet. And obviously, we all take things from other places. I'm not saying that you cannot. I'm saying that you take those things and you do something different with it. And so far, whether it be his sample choices or screamo kind of style of rap, I just don't feel like he's done much original with the things that he's decided to take. So while the production was very good, the creativity was bad in my opinion. Oh, and even I feel like the attempts of him being creative, such as songs on Geeked Up where he tried to bring a different vibe on the chorus, didn't really land at all. And so even the times where he kind of did try to step out of the box kind of fell flat for me personally. So yeah, definitely a mid on the production and creativity aspect of it all. So let's talk about the features. The features were definitely the highlight of the album in the sense that they, sort of outdid K Flock themselves and were a bit of a breath of fresh air. Cardi B on "Shake It," probably one of the top 5 verses of the year. People will get mad at me. I think it's up there with Churchill Downs, Johnny P's Caddy, and London by J. Cole. It was generally an incredible verse, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. Things like "Make a Movie" with Favi, fire verse. Definitely glad to see those guys collab and come together. Bronx times, Brooklyn is always dope to see. Gucci Mane had a really surprise fire verse for me. I really didn't expect to enjoy his verse as much as I did. But like he's kind of that example of like me being surprised that he was flowing on the beat better than K Flock was. And but it was overall a really good experience listening to Gucci Mane, and seeing these already established mainstream artists ride drill beats is always such an interesting phenomenon, and so that was really really fun. Overall, like I said, the features were definitely good. Some of the things holding it back from being great and amazing. I'm not the biggest fan of all of the other Bronx drill guys. I do like Set the Trend, but people like Dougie B and B Love don't really do much for me. They're pretty similar to K Flock, except with probably even worse flows. And so I didn't really enjoy a lot of Dougie B's contributions besides maybe Shake It and Brotherly Love Part 2. Um, and overall, it some of those Bronx drill songs, a lot of it felt like they bled into each other, the different features, which was kind of unfortunate. But even they did their own thing, and Set the Trend, like I said, was also a bit of a breath of fresh air on the first song of the album. And so overall musical execution. This is normally where K Flock kind of takes the crown jewel, because I feel like K Flock to me has never been the best rapper, has never been the best with flows, but I do feel like it does come together into a nice, neat, sort of dope song one way or another. Songs such as Shake It and Is You Ready and PSA being such examples. With this one, it was okay. I'll give it a mid. Um, a lot of choruses that are just okay, verses that are not really memorable, no real standout punchlines or anything like that for me to grab onto. The production was cool, so that definitely brings it up a notch, but I think that my sort of lack of attachment to any of the choruses definitely speaks volumes to the level of music, the execution of this record. So yeah, I'll give it a mid. Like I said, there were definitely high points such as Shake It and Make a Movie, where I feel like K Flock has really figured something out from a musical perspective. And I think it was Ain't No Love or something like that. One of his deeper songs that I also thought was pretty good. But then you had songs like Don't Trip and that first song that really just, I was pretty let down and disappointed overall. And again, I want to stress that it really doesn't help that I've heard a lot of what K Flock has been doing. And so I also feel like to a certain extent, I've heard other people do this style better, and so it kind of also bodes worst in that perspective. Finally, for the overall rating, I'm gonna give it a mid. I'm not gonna give it a bad. I'm not sure when I'll finally give out my first bad, but this won't be it. I definitely feel like there was enough pros of the record, such as the production and the features, to definitely give it an above a bad rating. But I do feel like there is still a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot of improvements that need to be made in order for this style of music to receive any modicum of respect in the larger zeitgeist. And just quickly to address the thumbnail, the title and the thumbnail, I do genuinely feel that way. Now, of course, K Flock hasn't reached the same heights as a 6ix9ine, and so, you can kind of argue that, well, no one was calling K Flock the King of New York in the same way, which you're right. But I would also argue that K Flock is less talented musically. And again, I'm not, obviously I don't support what 6ix9ine did. I don't think anyone assumes that. But I think just from a musical perspective, I think that when 6ix9ine was really in his bag, I think he was just far more musically talented, but still sort of represents this sort of shouting, loud, aggressive person who kind of just shouts his way to number one and takes the world by storm, takes the New York rap scene by storm without really having any quality projects to speak of. That's just how I associate it in my personal head. So yeah, overall, that's that. In regards to the title, that's kind of how I feel. I do feel like K Flock is very much overrated, And while I understand why he's popular and why he has the following and push that he does, it is, I think, a bit overzealous. And I also wonder if this is the trajectory of his career and his artistic expression, how long he really is going to be popular musically, and how long people are going to stay interested in his music. With that being said, thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe this record was actually fire and I just don't know it. But yeah, definitely let me know what y'all thought in the comments. Thank you all for watching and have a good day, y'all. Peace.